Chapter 5, Inward Bound, Episode 5. Welcome back to the Inward Bound. I'm Deb, your host today. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to share a gentle disclaimer. In this podcast, I speak openly about trauma, loss, and healing. My goal is to share my personal journey, which you may see your journey in mine, as much of our journeys through childhood are a lot alike. Not to offer you medical or psychological advice. Please listen with care, be mindful of your emotional state, and take breaks or seek support if any kind of the episode brings up different feelings. You are not alone. You are safe here. And I honor you for joining me. Parents do the best they can with what they know how to do. If they knew better, they would have done better. In this chapter of my story, life had a place that was supposed to represent stability, effort, and a fresh start. But sometimes life has a way of revealing the cracks before we even settle in. What happened on that back porch, one of those moments I never forget, not because of the scorpion alone, but because of what it symbolized for all of us. This episode opens with that memory and the deeper truth hiding beneath it. There was a moment in our story when life shifted just enough to give us a breath of hope. The day my mother was finally able to buy a house. It wasn't perfect and it wasn't fancy, but it was hers. As for a woman who had been pushed, pulled, and shaken by life's storms, owning that small house felt like planting her feet on solid ground for the first time in years. This house became more than walls or roof. It was proof that she was trying to create stability, trying to give us something she had never had herself, trying to lift us up even when she was exhausted and worn down. As a child, I didn't fully understand what it meant for a single mother with limited resources to buy a home. I didn't understand the paperwork, the stress, the sacrifices, or the determination. But I did understand the feeling, the sense that maybe, just maybe, life was starting to settle, even if only for a moment. This house held our fears, our laughter, our confusion, our memories, and our unmet needs. It was the backdrop of the next chapter, the place where new lessons, new pain, and new pieces of our story unfolded. And like everything in my childhood, it carried both hope and heartbreak at the same time. Not long after we moved into the house Mom had worked so hard to buy, something happened that stayed with me for a long time. I remember Mom stepping out onto the back porch, probably trying to catch a quiet moment or breathe in a bit of peace. Instead, she froze and then screamed. There on the porch sat a scorpion. In that moment, her body reacted. She grabbed a piece of wood, swinging at it, terrified and determined, trying to protect us and herself at the same time. I can still feel the tension in the air, the fear, the shock, the sense that even in a place we hoped would bring stability, danger could still show up without warning. Inside the house, we had a picnic table that served as our dinette table. Everything was simple, stretched, and done with what we had. But after that moment on the porch, things shifted. Whether it was the scorpion alone or a deeper sense that this house wasn't going to bring the safety she'd hoped for, we didn't stay long. Soon after, we moved into an apartment. Looking back, this moment wasn't just about a scorpion. It symbolized how fragile life felt for Mom. How even her best efforts to build stability were constantly shaken by fear, responsibility, and the weight she carried alone. And for me as a child, it was another moment where the environment reflected the instability happening inside all of us. This memory is part of the landscape of our story, small in detail, but big in meaning. The meaning behind the memory, looking back, the scorpion wasn't the real story. It was Mom's reaction, the fear that overtook her, and the way life kept pulling the ground out from under her just when she tried to stand. For us, that moment marked another shift, another unexpected change, and another move. But it also revealed how hard she was trying, how much she carried alone, and how fragile stability felt in those years. As we close this part of the story, we hold both the humor of the moment and the heartbreak behind it, because both are true and both shape the journey forward. The lighter days before life shifted, before the chaos of later years, there was a season in our childhood that felt wide open and full of freedom. No stepdad in the picture, no heavy tension in the air, just the desert, our imaginations, and the wild joy of being kids. In this chapter, I share the lighter moments that shaped us, the pony rides, the forts, the adventures, and the first signs that something deeper was stirring beneath the fun. There was a chapter in our childhood when things felt lighter, freer, and full of the kind of adventures only kids can create. With no stepdad in the picture, my brother and I carved out our own fun in ways that feel almost unbelievable now. We rode ponies for hours, feeling wild and independent, until the day everything went sideways. I can still see my brother's saddle slipping, turning completely under the pony's belly while he hung on for dear life. It was terrifying in the moment, but it became one of those stories we'd laugh about for years. We built forts deep in the desert, disappearing for hours into our own little world. Those dusty hideouts became our escape, our playground, and sometimes even our sense of safety. There was something magical about having that kind of freedom, where imagination filled in the gaps life had left open. But not everything stayed innocent. For reasons I didn't understand then, my brother started acting out. Little pranks at first, things kids might shrug off, but over time, those pranks grew into bigger, bolder, and sometimes disruptive enough to get us kicked out of more than one apartment. Looking back, those behaviors make more sense now, knowing the emotional weight he was carrying even as a child. These memories, fun, wild, confusing, and bittersweet, paint a fuller picture of who we were before life shifted again. They're pieces of our story that show both the joy and the early signs of the struggles we didn't yet have words for. Joy, chaos, and the first cracks beneath the surface, those memories hold some of the purest laughter of our childhood. Sunlight, ponies, desert forts, and endless hours of play. But within that joy lived the early signs of struggle, too. My brother's pranks growing bolder, the disruptions that followed, and the instability that kept returning to our doorstep. As we close this section, we hold both truths, the innocence of our fun and the beginning of the fractures that would shape what came next. When childhood behaviors start to speak in every family story, there are moments when a child's behavior begins telling the truth long before anyone understands the message. At around 10, my brother's actions shifted. Pranks, disruptions, and bold behavior that didn't match who he truly was inside. At the time, it just felt like trouble. Now, with clarity and healing, it's clear those behaviors were signals of something deeper. A young boy overwhelmed by trauma, fear, and instability, struggling to make sense of a world that kept changing around on him. Why my brother started acting out at age 10. At around age 10, my brother began acting out in ways that were confusing at the time. Pranks, disruptions, and behaviors that sometimes caused real consequences, like getting us thrown out of several apartments. Looking back with an adult understanding and a trauma-informed perspective, those behaviors make far more sense than they did then. He was carrying trauma with no outlet. Children who live with chaos, fear, or instability often don't have the language to describe what they're feeling. Instead, their emotions will spill out through behavior. Acting out becomes a form of communication when words aren't available or safe. Boys tend to internalize emotional pain. While some children turn inward under stress, boys often turn outward. My brother's pranks and wild behaviors were likely expressions of fear, confusion, and emotional overwhelm he didn't know how to handle. Acting out gave him a sense of control. In a childhood filled with unpredictability, moves, shifting caregivers, emotional tension, he had very little control over his world. Pranks, reactions, and disruption gave him a way to feel powerful, even if only for the moment. He was displacing fear he couldn't express. At 10 years old, he understood danger enough to feel it deeply, but not enough to process it. His behaviors were a physical release of fear that he had no adult help regulating. He may have been subconsciously protecting me. Sometimes one sibling internalizes the emotional pressure while the other externalizes it, becoming the distraction or the loud one. His behavior may have been absorbed emotional tension that would have otherwise landed on me. Lack of a consistent father figure matter. At that age, boys look for structure and identity. Without a stable father figure, and with ongoing instability in the home, he was essentially navigating his development without guidance. Acting out often fills that void. Frequent moves increase behavior problems. Understanding the boy behind the behavior, looking back, my brother's acting out wasn't rebellion. It was emotional overflow. It was a child expressing pain the only way he knew how. Today, I see the scared 10-year-old beneath the pranks, the confusion beneath the chaos, and the tenderness beneath the trouble. As we close this chapter, we honor the truth behind his behavior, the weight he carried silently, and the way trauma shapes children long before they can understand it. This insight helps bring compassion, connection, and healing to the memories that once felt confusing or painful. The day our family changed forever before the world taught me full meaning of sacrifice, loss, or war, I learned it through the death of my uncle, a man who had been a steady presence in our lives when we first moved to the West Coast. He wasn't just an uncle. He was a part of our foundation, someone who offered us stability during unstable times. When he was killed in Vietnam serving as a Green Beret paratrooper, everything in our family shifted. This chapter begins with that moment, the grief, the confusion, and the shock that rippled through all of us, including me at just 8 years old. During this 2-year period of my childhood, our family faced tragedy that shook all of us to the core. My uncle, the man we lived with when we first moved to the West Coast, was killed in Vietnam. He served as a Green Beret paratrooper, jumping into dangerous combat zones, and he was shot multiple times while serving his country. I was around 8 years old when this happened. At that age, you don't fully understand war, sacrifice, or the magnitude of death. But I did understand loss. I remember the sadness, the heaviness in the air, and the way this news sent a wave of grief through the entire family. My uncle wasn't just a relative. He was part of the foundation that held us together during a chaotic time. Losing him left a hole that none of us had the emotional tools to process. My mother, my grandmother, and the rest of the family were devastated. His death wasn't just a personal loss. It was a symbolic one too. He was brave, strong, and protective, and his loss added another layer of fear and instability to a family already struggling to stay afloat. For me, as a child, it was confusing and heartbreaking. For the adults, it was a combination of pride, sorrow, anger, and deep pain. This loss became part of the emotional landscape of my childhood, a silent weight that shaped the atmosphere we lived in. It was one more moment where life shifted, one more trauma absorbed, and one more reason our home felt different, heavier, and more fragile in those years. Understanding this now brings clarity to the emotional patterns that followed. His death influenced our family in ways we couldn't see then, but can finally acknowledge now. The weight of a loss we could not name as a child, I couldn't grasp the full reality of war or the depth of the sacrifice my uncle made, but I felt the heaviness that settled over our family. His death left a silence, a sadness, an emotional crack that none of us knew how to address. The adults carried heartbreak they couldn't express, and we children carried confusion we couldn't voice. Closing this chapter is about honoring who he was, acknowledging the sorrow we all felt, and recognizing how deeply this loss shaped our family and the years that followed. A day that revealed how unsafe the world could feel, this chapter steps into one of the most frightening moments of my childhood. a moment that unfolded during a time already stepped in grief after losing my uncle. Emotions were heavy, the adults around us were overwhelmed, and life felt unsteady. What happened next was just an unexpected disruption. It was a moment that showed how quickly safety can shatter in a child's world. This is the story of the day my aunt, struggling with mental illness, showed up at our school with what looked like a gun in her hand. Not long after losing Uncle Johnny, a time when my entire family was already shaken with grief, another frightening event unfolded that added even more fear and confusion to an already unstable period of my childhood. My aunt, my mother's sister, came to our house after a fight with her husband. She had a history of mental illness, and her emotions were unpredictable and intense. One morning, she decided that my brother and I didn't need to go to school. Mom managed to get us ready and off to school before heading to work, not knowing what her sister was planning. Within just a few hours, my brother and I were walking down the hall at school when we saw her coming toward us, holding a play gun in her hand. As children, we had no idea it wasn't real. All we saw was an unstable adult approaching us with what looked like a weapon. Fear took over instantly. My brother and I turned and ran as fast as we could. We didn't know what to do or who to tell. Our bodies reacted the only way they knew how: run, hide, and find safety. We sprinted into the principal's office and hid behind a refrigerator in the staff break room, terrified and unsure what was going to happen next. Looking back, this moment was deeply traumatic. We were already overwhelmed by loss of our uncle, and this terrifying incident reinforced a message that we were already learning too young. Life wasn't safe, adults could be unpredictable, and danger could appear at any moment without warning. This event became another piece of an emotional puzzle of my childhood. One more layer of fear, confusion, and survival that shaped who I become and how my nervous system learned to respond to the world. The memory that stayed with me as a child: my brother and I didn't have words for terror, instability, or emotional overwhelm. We only had reactions, running, hiding, and doing whatever we could to feel safe. Looking back, this moment marked us in ways we couldn't understand at the time. It layered fear on top of grief, confusion on top of loss, and taught our young nervous system to stay alert, even at school. As we close this chapter, we honor what our younger selves survived and the strength it took to keep going in a world that often felt unpredictable and unsafe. At just 8 and 10 years old, we were children trying to make sense of the world far too big for our hearts. In the silence left behind by adults who couldn't stay, our young minds began forming beliefs about our worth, our safety, and our place in the world. Today, we explore those early decisions, not to relive the pain, but to understand how powerful and protective the child mind can be. This reflection gives voice to the little ones we once were, honoring their courage, their confusion, and their instinct to survive. By age 8, a little girl who watches a parent leave or sees chaos and emotional inconsistency often forms identity-level beliefs. I'm not important enough. Children at this age personalize adult choices. If he cared enough, he would have stayed. I'm not worth protecting. My mother was in survival mode, not emotional nurturing mode. People don't protect me or choose me. I have to be strong. I took on an emotional caregiver role. I'm responsible for holding myself together. Or maybe something is wrong with me. Children blame themselves before blaming adults. If I were better, he wouldn't have gone. By age 10, boys interpret trauma differently. They lean toward identity shaped by failure, powerlessness, or shame. My brother may have thinking I'm supposed to fix things, but I can't. Boys often feel responsible. He may have thought I'm not strong enough. I can't rely on anyone. Inconsistent parenting leads to emotional shutdown. Or you survive by staying quiet and taking care of yourself. Or my needs don't matter. He likely absorbed. My feelings take up space and make things worse. Or I'm not worth staying for. Boys also interpret abandonment personally. If I were better, Dad would be here. I should have already known how to be a man. He pushed himself too early, creating lifelong emotional distance. The important part, we were both little children trying to understand adult failures. Children don't have the brain development to see Dad had trauma, Mom was overwhelmed. Their choices had nothing to do with us. So children naturally think, what did I do wrong? Not because it's true, but because the child's brain must assign meaning to survive. So I'm going to move on to a listener's question. Why would a sibling say they deserve the abuse? Why would a sibling say they deserve the abuse that happened to them, or that they don't remember it? This question opens the door to understanding how trauma affects memory, identity, and self-blame differently for each child in the same family. Trauma shapes every child differently. Children often survive painful homes by creating beliefs that help them cope. It wasn't really that bad, or I caused it, or I deserved it. These beliefs are not truths. They are survival strategies. Self-blame protects the nervous system. For many survivals, especially men, it feels safer to take responsibility than to face the helplessness they felt as a child. Self-blame becomes a shield. It prevents them from feeling the full weight of the pain. It gives the illusion of control, and it helps them avoid emotions they never learned how to process. With this listener's question, they couldn't remember. So by saying I don't remember can be a protective wall. Trauma can block or soften childhood memories to keep a person functional. When someone says, I don't remember what you're talking about, it doesn't mean it didn't happen. It means the emotional truth is too overwhelming for them to access. When we talk about childhood trauma, siblings' memories, and the way we each survive pain, it can stir emotions we didn't expect. So let's pause, breathe, and remember something sacred. God was there in the places you don't remember. God was there in the places you survived. And God is here now, bringing light into the stories you're finally able to speak. Every child responds to trauma differently, and every adult awakens at a different pace. Your healing is not meant to judge another's journey. Your healing is meant to illuminate your own. So if a sibling can't see what you see, or can't name what you're ready to name, release them into God's timing. Send them love instead of expectation, and trust that their soul will face the truth when it's safe for them to do so. You're not responsible for their awakening. You're responsible only for walking your own path with grace, compassion, and courage. As you leave this episode, may the Lord cover you with peace. May He remind you that your voice matters. May He continue to reveal the beauty that's been growing beneath the pain. And may you feel Him whisper over you, you survived, you're healing, and I'm always with you, always. Amen. As we close, let's hold compassion for those young versions of ourselves who tried so hard to understand what was never theirs to carry. Those early beliefs were not flaws. They were survival strategies created by children who deserve stability, love, and protection. Today, we replace those old conclusions with truth. We were always worthy, always enough, and never to blame for the choices of the adults around us. May this understanding bring your healing to your heart and strengthen to your journey forward. Thank you for spending this time with me today, for listening with an open heart, and for honoring the tender places we've explored. Keep the questions coming. I love the listeners' questions. I love to be able to answer them so I can kind of get a gauge of where people are in their journey. So please keep sending me questions. Healing isn't loud or dramatic. It's the quiet understanding, the soft truth-telling, and the gentle moments of recognizing how our past still lives in our body, our choices, and our story. As you leave this episode, take a deep breath and let yourself feel grounded. You don't need to figure out everything at once. You don't need to revisit the painful parts before you're ready. You're allowed to move at your own pace. Remember, healing unfolds in layers, and every layer you uncover is a step toward clarity, compassion, and freedom, both for yourself and the people you love. Thank you for walking this journey with me. You're not alone, and as always, may peace touch the places in you that have waited the longest. Until next time, take gentle care of yourself. My story started in trauma, but my path became one of the awakening. I pray something in each of the Inward Bound episodes reminds you of your own strength, your own wisdom, and your ability to rise and heal with your higher power alongside of you. As you move forward, take a moment to honor yourself. You showed up, you listened, you allowed your spirit to be witnessed. That is powerful. If something in today's episode touched your heart, I invite you to carry it with you. Let it guide you, and let it soften the places that still ache. Healing is not a destination. It's a returning again and again to who you truly are. I would love to hear your story of healing. Please text me. If you may need guidance to help maneuver your healing, I am a licensed life coach. I worked with a psychotherapist for 20 years, as well as I'm still a practicing RN. You can text me at Deb RN inwardbound at AOL.com, or we have a spot on Reddit if you want to ask questions, and I may even answer your questions on the podcast. Remember, the two most important relationships, in my opinion, in our life is the one we have with our higher power, which is God for me, and the relationship you have with yourself. Thanks for being here, trusting me with your time. Until next time, keep walking inward, keep listening to your spirit, and keep choosing yourself. Inward Bound isn't a retreat. It's a returning, a return to truth, a return to parts of us we learned to silence. If this chapter resonated with you, honor that. There's nothing to fix right now. Healing begins with noticing, not repairing. Awareness is brave. Slowing down is brave. Listening is brave. This is Deb's world. Inward Bound opens a door to understanding our behaviors, our relationships, and our coping skills. A big shout out to my editor, Jordan. Chapter 6 is about my personal realization of why so many of our men are still boys inside, and why so many end up in addiction, numbness, and or prison. Stay tuned if this may have been in your story too. I'm going to close by sending you more love, peace, joy, and happiness. God bless.